Welcome. So good to have you here. And if you're new, this is accessible to ask questions, have discussion. There's just a little feature to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you, which reminds me I need to be able to hear you, so I'll need my headset. So a lot going on in our world right now. A lot of things that we don't see often that are subtle under the surface, become very clear right now. Good time to deepen our practice and our connection here. All right. So I wanted to first just check in and see from the practice that we've been doing over the last week, if anyone had anything that's come up, any questions, anything they'd like to share. If so, you just raise your hand and we can see you and can unmute. And for those of you who are new, we've been going through the books, How to Practice, which is essentially the Four Noble Truths with a commentary by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So a really precious treasure. And every day there's been a practice that we've been doing. That gets recorded every day, and it's in the community. So we do practice together and so forth. Okay, nobody's raising hands. I think. Okay. So we are at a point where we've covered these first two truths. The truth of suffering, the truth of cause of suffering. We had a conversation last week around what happens when we die. And prior to that, this sort of core of misperception, and it gives rise to the kleshas, the afflictions, the way we perceive our environment, and the habits and the conditioning that come with us. And then as our body dissolves, these carry on. And so I had a good, ripe discussion about that, and shared a bit about my teacher. And now we're coming to the third noble truth. So for those of you with the book, it's on page 57. Third noble truth, true cessation. So now we've had cause of suffering, we just did truth of suffering previous, and now cessation. We can remove this. Since defilements of the mind, such as lust, hatred, jealousy, and belligerence, are based on a fundamental misconception of the nature of persons and objects, the process of overcoming them requires a solution to that ignorance. The question becomes how to uproot the ignorance that is the cause of suffering. It cannot be pulled out like a thorn or removed through surgery. In order to overcome this misconception of the nature of persons and things, you have to understand their true nature. Then through continued meditation, you become accustomed to the truth and increase the power of wisdom to undermine negative emotions rooted in ignorance. So I've given you a precise prescription here. At this point, an explanation of emptiness would be helpful, since this is what wisdom realizes about the nature of persons and things. But in brief, the fact that defilements such as afflictive emotions can be extinguished at all is due to the mind not being impure by nature. It has a pure essence. Defilements are purified through meditation on the true nature both of the mind and of all other things, phenomena. Extinguishing these defilements is the third noble truth of cessation, a state beyond suffering and its causes. So he's letting you know that the mind's its essence is pure, and the contamination, the afflictions, well, they can be removed. Often the analogy is, like dirty water. You get the dirt out, water's pure, and sky clouds, another analogy. The sky is always there. There's nothing wrong with the sky. Clouds come and go, but they are not the sky. Clouds are not the sky. Our mental afflictions are not who we are either. And the path to doing this, he outlines pretty precisely here. In order to overcome this misconception, 57, of the nature of persons and things, you have to understand the true nature. Then, through continued meditation, you become accustomed to the truth and increase the power of wisdom to undermine negative emotions rooted in ignorance. So, the nature of our mind is pure, our Buddha nature is pure, and we can root out the core root of our misconceptions that give rise to suffering, that give rise to our samsara that we experience. And the way to do that is to actually see clearly. It's to know the truth. It's to understand emptiness. And emptiness is, he's going to go into more detail about how we really can achieve that realization methodically. But he's making a point that that's what we need to do. We need to start cultivating an accurate view of self and the world that we live in, phenomenon, and meditate on it and deepen that. And so what he's bringing in is the ability to meditate, the stability of mind with wisdom, with vipassana. And we've talked about that previously, to work on training the technology, the mind, to be stable so that we can meditate more clearly, more single-pointedly, that we can saturate our mind with the wisdom that we can accumulate through our meditations on emptiness. So on one hand, it's stability. On the other, it's vipassana, it's wisdom. So just having an intellectual understanding of this is going to uproot it. We need to have a direct realization, and that can be attained as we train our mind, as we cultivate the conditions for it. And so this path, which is going to be the fourth point here, the fourth truth, is how we start creating the conditions to ripen the mind, to be receptive to the analytical types of meditation, the vipassana, that allow us to see more accurately self and phenomena, and have a realization that we can really uproot the ignorance, and uproot only through the ability to have a very well-trained mind and to apply the medicine of these meditations. So this is where the Buddha's big innovation of shamatha and vipassana come together. The shamatha practice of a stable mind, achieving shamatha, and then using that mind to do vipassana, emptiness type meditations, wisdom meditations. And as we get direct experience, we get to saturate that mind and deepen our direct experience of the nature of self and things. But in order for any of that to happen, we're going to need to create the conditions for that. And that's what we've been working on over the last couple of weeks here, working on the virtuous activities, avoiding the non-virtuous, creating ripened conditions karmically, so that we're fertilizing the soil of our consciousness. We're ripening potentials within our mind stream, engaging in good ethical behavior and avoiding unethical behavior. Without that, nothing's going to grow. So, I must have some allergy to something in here. I keep getting a bit clogged up when I sit here. So, I want to apologize if I sound a little congested. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Okay, so are we good at this point, or anything popping up yet? Okay, I'm gonna say we're good. So the third truth is the shortest explanation, and basically saying that you can remove the suffering. There is cessation, no cause, no result. You can remove the cause that gives rise to all of this suffering. And so it's just stating pretty emphatically that we can remove this ignorance, this misperception. And if we do so, it can't give rise to anything. It's not there. No seed, no tree, right? It's just, so it can be removed. The nature of self, the nature of mind is pure. We just need to filter out the confusion with some clarity. Which brings us to now the path. So the fourth noble truth, true paths. True paths refer to 3 ways of training that are the principal topics of this book: morality, concentrated meditation, and wisdom. Spiritual practice along these paths leads to true cessations, culminating in nirvana and eventually Buddhahood. So this is the key here. Is 3 higher trainings, these 3 paths. And morality, ethics, concentrated meditation, right? So that's that stable mind that we'll be working on. And wisdom. Wisdom is what unlocks it. So, but these 3 work in conjunction with each other. And if we just focus on wisdom, we're not going to have the right conditions. If we just do the ethical behavior, we won't have the wisdom. If we don't have the stable mind, we don't have a trained mind, we're not going to get very far in anything. So they all work really together, that as we engage in virtuous activity, we're cultivating our highest potentials, we're watering good karmic imprints, we're creating a conducive environment. If we meditate, then our mind will get trained. We'll be a prisoner of an obsessive, compulsive, busy mind. It allows us to be present, to be aware when we bring our activities to mind that we're engaged in, knowing what's ethical and what's not. And if we have wisdom, it brings them all 3 together. Wisdom is starting with an intellectual understanding of dependent origination, the empty nature of self and things, that I can start conceptualizing, start watching in real time, start bringing an awareness to it, bearing that in mind as I engage in my day. So for example, I won't confuse that person as a jerk. I will understand that there's someone arising as a person who's doing something that I think is being a jerk, as opposed to that person is a jerk. So just having that understanding of dependent origination of my perceptions influencing how I'm conceptualizing and labeling someone, and then I have emotions that arise because I see a jerk. And we can start with starting to understand it intellectually and observe it. You start to observe that that same person who's a jerk is actually kind sometimes and helpful sometimes. Oh, well, not a jerk now. Then start to, our own selves observe what gives rise to certain behaviors, and then start noticing how, as I change my perception, my experience of that person changes. Am I focusing on this thing about them or this other thing about them? Or am I just bringing some compassion and understanding we're all trying to find our way? What am I bringing to it? How am I affecting my experience of them? And there's no objective world that, these labels just, pinpoint. So we can start that intellectually, And we need to bring that wisdom into our interactions with ethics, with a mind that can bear that in mind. So we need to train our mind, and we need to be able to establish the ability to be present with what we're doing so we're aware of what we're doing, which is a lot easier said than done. Right? So to be present of the choices we make, what we're doing, why we're doing it, whether it's based in reality or not, whether it's healthy or not, whether it's ethical or not. And it takes some training to be that present, but it's very doable. And we start where we are, and we take little steps. Little steps. All of this, as we've been talking about, is about little steps, about continuous practice, and allowing these potentials to be watered, to grow, and to allow us to be a little better, today than maybe it was yesterday, and let this path unfold as we engage in it. It's not, hey, from this moment on, I'm going to be like this. It takes time to train the mind. It takes time to unravel a lot of the habits and tendencies and karma we've cultivated. But we're doing this. I'm curious, those of you who've been doing this practice every day, what you've noticed about yourself just in the couple of weeks where, we're starting a day with the motivation, setting an intention, meditating, checking in a few times, the evening purifying, and just start noticing how that shifts our way of being. That doing this practice, even imperfectly, is having an impact. And see how that's working for you. Does anyone want to share any experience with their current practice, or what may be challenging, or what they're finding helpful? Got a hand, okay. All right, Carla? I think you're up. Oh, you know what? I can't hear you. And I do have my cell phone. Let's see, I do have it plugged. You're unmuted. And I can't hear you. Question, can anyone else hear Carla, or is it just me? Got a chat pop up. Okay, now we can't hear. So it might be a microphone issue on your end, Carla, because you are unmuted, and you're unmuted. So sometimes clicking, I'm not hearing anything. I'm gonna just put you back over there for a minute. And yeah, I'm sorry. I'm curious if someone else could try talking, just so I can see if it's just you, or no, it's not just you, if it's the technology, or so let me have Aaron try. Okay, Aaron.
Just checking see if this is working.
Yep, I can hear you. So it must be a microphone issue.
Super duper.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I do want conversation. So let's see about Mike Ruby here. All right, Mike, if you unmute, you should be ready to go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. In regards to the practice, stuff isn't coming out of my mouth, even though it comes up between my ears. So I think it's been a long time coming, but that's been something that's even before, focusing on this practice, I've started to notice that stuff. It still comes up. I still have arguments with people that aren't there, and discuss issues that are not issues that I just make up. But the farther I go along, it really doesn't come out of my mouth. unless, well, I'm pretty isolated as far as what I'm doing, as far as work goes and stuff. So sometimes I am talking to myself, and usually if I'm tired or toward the end of the day is when something's liable to pop out, some minor frustration, but it never goes far. It's just like, oh, there you go, better can that. So that's about it.
Yeah, well, that sounds like significant progress. As you're saying, that stuff comes up, but it doesn't come out. And,
right.
That's, it takes a while for stuff to stop coming up, but just the incredible progress that you're talking about in the journey of having the ability to notice that and respond differently, advanced practice, my friend. Very well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Carla, let me know if you want to try again. You just see. All right. Okay, we're going to try it again. Let's see.
My computer crashed.
Ah, we got you. Okay.
So I find it quite challenging to, have a better awareness of some of the unskillful habits I have. And first of all, I tend to focus more awareness, I think, on the unskillful habits, and maybe don't celebrate or congratulate myself for this, hopefully significantly more skillful habits that tend to go unnoticed. And it's quite challenging to not be somewhat self-critical of the unskillful habits.
Right.
So I've just found over the last few weeks that we've been practicing this, that I'm really sort of struggling in some ways to not slip into that self-critical mode.
Right. Yes, that is, I'm sure others are nodding. And as we introduced this, we really talked about having that observing mind be this nurturing, supportive, our Buddha nature is helping us. But easier said than done. And to put a little exclamation point on your point, I earlier today was working with a group. So it's a therapy group, and so I was running this session, and I did a little exercise on people reflecting on what they've done skillfully and unskillfully regarding happiness and suffering, and then when everybody shared, what they shared was their unskillful stuff. Everyone led with that, and the noticing was how much easier it was to pull up what I did unskillfully versus what I've done well. And so what you're describing is this tendency that is very pervasive of that self-critical mind. And my invitation to them, which is going to also be my invitation to you as well, is on maybe the worst day ever, skillful activities are probably 90% to 10% unskillful, right? Like in 24 hours, we're sleeping some of that, so we're probably pretty good there. And but if we look at our day, the vast majority of everything that we do, we are either doing from kindness, from a good place, from a non-harmful place, from a neutral place, not harming anything, not creating harm, all day long. And then there's the unskillful that pops up. So I think even like on the worst day, it could be like 90% skillful and at least not harmful would be the more accurate way of saying that. So we do things all day long with good motivation, with good intention, wanting to be a good person, and none of that gets recognized. But what does get recognized is, when an emotional sort of triggered state or something that has a little bigger hook, and then whether it's skillful or not will pop up. So the invitation to be mindful is to notice all of these skillful. So the idea is I'm cultivating virtuous activity, and then I can be non-virtuously criticizing myself for not being virtuous, right? And so that's something that we really want to work with. Jetsuma Tenzin is so wonderful about understanding this nature of ourselves as well, and that the big part of this practice is to notice that critical mind and not criticize the critical mind. To go, oh, yeah, there's my confusion trying to look out for me again. And so that becomes the work. So as you're engaging in this, now your motivation every day, my invitation is to notice the critic. And that will be your skillful activity. And see how we can shift that tone. So that becomes the work. Also, I think it's important to jot down and recognize what we're doing that we feel good about, the virtuous activities. So we always talk about dedicating merit in the evening, but there's something really meaningful about saturating your mind, calling to mind something you did well, and allowing yourself to feel that. Not in a self-centered way. It's not I'm a great person, because it's that I engaged in a virtuous activity and here's what it felt like and it feels good. And what happens is when we allow that process, we let that, what we water grows. I just allow myself to feel that, what it felt like to do something I felt good about, and sit with that for a little bit. Let it sit in. Neuroscience around that is that, neurons that fire together wire together. So allowing the thought of that virtuous activity and how I felt good about it to fuse neurons that fire together, wire together. But it also then karmically, from a Buddhist perspective, what we're doing is we're creating habits and tendencies. So allowing ourselves to feel the goodness of our own goodness is a virtuous activity that's going to help support us in the process. So the two things, number one is be more aware of these virtuous things that we're doing all day long, our good motivations, intentions, what we're doing. But then also, as a primary awareness, notice when the critic arises and then jot that as skillful, meaning not that it's skillful that I'm self-critical, it's skillful that I'm catching that tendency of mine and I'm just thanking them for their input and gonna move on. It gave me an insight to myself. So hopefully that will help, and I encourage us to really do our best each day to allow ourselves that opportunity to recognize the good that we do.
Yes, thank you. I'll start working on that.
All right, thanks, Carla. Glad you got to talk here, because what you're sharing, a lot of people, like I said, that's what came up in group today. Okay, so as we engage in this practice, really important in the morning to remember just, the incredible opportunity, but also to value what we're doing. And when we think about how far we've come, instead of how far we think we need to go, recognizing all we've walked through, all the good we've done, our desire to be a better person. These are all important things to remind ourselves of and allow that to settle in. Okay. looks like we're going to embark upon the path a bit. True paths, I'm just going to reread this. True paths refer to 3 ways of training that are principal topics of this book. This is what the book is primarily about. Morality, concentrated meditation, wisdom, spiritual practice along these paths leads to true cessations, culminating in nirvana and eventually Buddhahood. From beginningless time, we have had a valid awareness or consciousness of I. This I, or self, naturally and innately wants happiness and does not want suffering. And this desire is valid. It is true and reasonable, right? It's valid, it's true, it's reasonable. Consequently, all of us have the right to achieve happiness and to banish suffering. The fact that suffering and happiness themselves change from moment to moment indicates that these experiences depend upon causes and conditions. In order to get rid of suffering, we need to eliminate the causes and conditions of suffering. And in order to achieve happiness, we need to acquire the causes and conditions of happiness. Eliminate causes and conditions of suffering. Acquire the causes and conditions for happiness. The first 2 noble truths apply to the impure phenomena, which we want to get rid of, true sufferings, which are the effects, and true sources, which are the causes. I don't think I read it with right inflection. The first 2 noble truths apply to the impure phenomena, which we want to get rid of, true sufferings, which are the effects, and true sources, which are the causes. Okay. The final 2 noble truths are pure states which we want to attain, true cessations, which are the effects, the true paths, which are the causes. The way the Buddha taught the 4 noble truths, they contain 2 sequences, one of suffering, which we seek to abandon, and one of happiness, which we seek to adopt. Pretty straightforward there. So there's a summary for a daily practice here. Having recognized the scope of suffering, research its causes or sources and identify that the source of suffering is ignorance of the true nature of persons and things, which results in lust, hatred, and so forth. Realize that suffering can be removed. It can be extinguished through the spear of reality. Reflect that this true cessation is attained through the practice of morality, concentrated meditation, and wisdom of true paths. So that's a summary of a big process that we'll get to engage in. So what he's really, it's nice to be focused. Buddhism has so many teachings, and it can be so vast, and people get lost in lots of sutras. But we've got 4 noble truths. We've got 3 higher trainings. Basically, we're going to get involved in 3 higher trainings: ethics, concentration, wisdom, or morality, meditative, stabilization, and wisdom. And they're focused on 2 things here: eliminating suffering, cultivating happiness. So when we break it down this way, we can really have a very straightforward, structured, focused way of engaging in the world in a way that is going to allow us to cultivate this happiness and avoid the causes and conditions that give rise to suffering. And as we talked about previously, and what we've been working on over these first couple of weeks, is eliminating or doing our best to stop doing some of the non-virtuous activities that give rise to mental and emotional suffering here, and cultivate the virtuous activities. So pretty straightforward. Once again, we're going to eliminate this. We're working on this, and We're doing it through body, speech, and mind, being aware of the wholesome activities of body, speech, and mind, doing more of those. In which case we need to be mindful, so we're aware. But as was pointed out by Carla, as we become aware, it's messy. You know, when people first learn to meditate, they think, wow, you know, my mind is a busy, crazy place. And they think, you know, a lot of people think as they meditate, they just see all this, you know, and it's just, you know, it's making their mind worse. But it's not like that at all. My mind's always been like this. I just haven't looked. And then when I start to notice, I'm starting to see, oh, so that's the path. That is something to celebrate. I have a crazy busy mind, and I know I have a crazy busy mind. That's something to start with. And then as we meditate and as we stick with things, you know, we'll be able to develop some more stability. Likewise, my habits and things that I've done, I haven't even noticed that I do some of these things. Oh, that's not very helpful. And so maybe I'm going to work on patience, be a little more patient. The problem is that we'll notice when we're not patient rather than all the times we are patient. Right? So what you really want to, as we engage in this path of cultivating these 3 higher traits, as much as we can remember, is to remember that just the observation itself is skillful, is amazing. It is unlocking the door to liberation. The awareness of some of my habits that are unwholesome, even if I can't stop them, it's a pat on the back. I give myself credit just for wanting to meditate. You know? I think that's a good thing to do. I think it's important to meditate. And so nurturing that is going to be part of this process. And as we engage in more of the virtuous activities, it will soften and it will loosen up. And it'll create this fertilizer. Yeah, but it's a bit of a path. What they call it, paths. A few minutes. I do want to read just a couple paragraphs here, and we'll get into it because it's touching on something. Buddhists take a vow of morality in the context of first taking refuge in the Buddha, the states of realization, and in spiritual community. Refuge is the foundation for the practice of morality. Buddha teaches us how to find refuge from suffering and limitation. But the chief refuge or source of protection is found in the states of realization achieved through practicing morality, concentrated meditation, wisdom, and this is what I want to get to. Buddhist scriptures recommend that you hide your good qualities and achievements like a lamp inside a vessel. You should not advertise them unless there is a great purpose for doing so. It is considered a minor infraction of a monastic vow if he or she achieves the state of liberation and says to someone else, I have attained liberation. So I just wanted to touch that because I don't want any confusion around the idea that I should acknowledge and honor the good that I do. What's being said there is that I don't need to advertise it. I don't need, in other words, we cultivate a whole nother kind of attachment if we want to tell everyone of the good that we do. And he's going to a more specific thing around realization, but that the ability to recognize our value is one of the critical pieces of us being able to progress on this path. Tenzin Palmo I'll be quoting frequently she really says so nicely that we really need a healthy sense of self in order to eliminate the self. We need to have an understanding that we are valuable, that we have much to offer, that our lives are meaningful. And we really need to cultivate that. So if we feel less than, or if we're, feeling like we don't have potential, that we're not, enough, or in some way, well, we want to start there to recognize that we are enough, and that we are valuable, and that our lives are meaningful, and we have much to offer, and that we have Buddha nature. And we really need to cultivate a healthy sense of self as a human walking on this planet. As we heal and nurture that, it's that healthy sense of self that ultimately at some point will walk down this little path of letting go of the self. But we're not going to be very capable of doing any of that unless we have that sense of wholeness, that sense of well-being. And so I just wanted to make the point, because it's here, we don't advertise it, but we do honor it and acknowledge it and grow it and nurture it and offer our goodness to others. So that's something we've been doing in the loving kindness meditation we do every day. Really spend some time with that. So as we continue in this practice, and that's what we're going to keep doing, because right now we're going to go into the ethics, which is what we've been practicing. And maybe I'll have some reminders to honor and acknowledge the goodness that is innately who we are. This is innate goodness. The nature of mind is pure. There's compassion to be found there. The pure nature of the mind, that is accessible. And we want to honor and acknowledge that as much as we can. I think got a hand popping up. Looks like Aaron. Okay.
I had a thought, which is, I apologize to everybody in advance. But I was thinking, as you were speaking about this in the morality, that I've heard stories of monastics, generally from the past, having, instead of doing like a written check-in like we do, skillful, unskillful, is having black stones and white stones. And so whenever they recognize that something skillful they did, then they put a white stone in a satchel, and then they recognize anything that was kind of unskillful, they would put a black stone in the satchel. And then at the end of the day, look in the bag and see what's there. And I like the way that brings an awareness about our actions. And I challenge the community to think of a way that we could do that in modern terms. Is there like a little kit we could create with some beads or something like that? A real physical thing, a mala that you could create and use in a way that had white and black. Because I would really like to use something like that in unison with skillful and unskillful check-ins. So yeah, just a thought.
So basically, you're trying to get people to figure out a way to make your life easier so you can check
I was
your
hoping
mind.
that's what was going to happen.
Wow, it's very skillful.
I was thinking even an app. Is there an app out there that does this? But I would like to keep it physical, something that you could handle. Anyway, just a thought.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah. So, and here's a point that I want to make on that. Again, here's one of the big mistakes when we think about skillful and unskillful. If we have like angry thoughts, we often think that's unskillful. And as Mike pointed out, those things still come up, but I don't act on them. That's skillful. So having thoughts and attitudes and those things arise is not unskillful. As a matter of fact, as it arises, it's ethically neutral. What I do with it will have a karmic imprint. So so many people, as they engage in this path, as they engage in wholesome behavior, as they notice the unwholesome behavior, is they start putting unwholesome labels on things that are very wholesome, such as, I got angry and frustrated with so-and-so. But skillfully, I did not go act out on that. So in other words, I had this tremendous arising of frustration or whatever, and I did not let it take over my day. I didn't let me react in a way that was unhealthy or unskillful or harmful. That's skillful. And so what happens is, as we're trying to observe this, we will often think that these thoughts should not arise. And that's where, within mindfulness, the awareness of non-judgmentally noticing thoughts and feelings and emotions arise fits. Once they've arisen, what we do with it is what matters. And that's where judgment then comes in, good judgment, wholesome behavior, and so forth. So I would, again, that 90-10 thing, it's much probably 95.5% unwholesome. If I'm just observing my mind and my thoughts, my attitudes, and all those things, and thinking that's unskillful, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. But if I start to notice that I can have all those types of thoughts arise and still act in very kind, healthy ways and in non-harmful ways, that's all skillful. So all of that is really in the skillful column. That's what I'm doing with it. All of these are allowing us to cultivate our path of awakening, more merit, more wisdom. So that's a big thing to remember. So I think, if we're just watching our mind, it's more in judging it versus what we do with the thoughts that arise. So hopefully you all find that to bear in mind. And before we wrap up with a dedication here, I just want to let everyone know that the celebration of Sakadawa, the Buddha's enlightenment, birth, parinirvana, all of that is Friday. So very auspicious day. It said that I think karma is like 100 million times amplified. So I try not to emphasize that. I think every day is a good day to do good things. But it is a very auspicious day with the astrology and so forth. So on Wednesday at noon Mountain Time, we're going to do a special Buddha of Compassion practice. So prayers and compassion and purification, all of that at noon on Friday on Sakadawa. And so feel free to join us for that. We'll continue. I'll be sharing my morning practice with you. And bear in mind, I'm doing this with you as well. So I appreciate that we get to do it together. We'll pick a date for a half-day retreat coming up for this month, which we'll get on the calendar. And feels like there's one other thing. Oh, and the midday loving kindness meditation, there's only going to be 2 more sessions of that. So Thursday and Friday, tomorrow and the next day. After that, I need to, my work schedule changed, things have changed. So I'm not going to be able to continue to lead the daily meditation on loving kindness beginning next week. So we have 2 more sessions. There is a recording of it, and it's posted on the webpage. Encourage people to do that every day as much as you can. Again, that starts with cultivating loving kindness within ourselves, and recognizing our value and our own nurturing, and then we think about how we offer that to others and then bring it out to everyone. So a really wonderful practice. Okay, a few minutes over, but I'm so glad. And so when we come back on Wednesday, we'll be starting to unpack these teachings on the path of awakening, starting with our ethics and values that we've been working on. So we'll have a good head start. All right, well, let's take a little time to dedicate. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes Let us dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings, and all sentient beings may be free of suffering, find their liberation. And may we use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to help us engage in this path of awakening, creating the causes and conditions for liberation for ourselves, so we can truly be of benefit to all sentient beings. May we also dedicate the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes for the long life of all spiritual masters of all spiritual traditions who are authentically teaching a path of no more suffering. May they live long, may their teachings flourish, and may we offer a special dedication for long life of His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama. May he live long, may his teachings flourish, and may we all continue to benefit from all those teachings that have come our way. Well, thank you so much. Such a joy to be able to sit with all of you in this path. And this path is so necessary. There's so much upheaval and struggle out there that we have the opportunity to be a source of calm, a source of compassion. We can be an anchor for the struggle that's going on in the world, and we can have some calm and some composure and understand the confusion that's giving rise to the harmful things that are being done, and know that it's impermanent, and it's our stable practice that's going to endure as these confused, mentally afflicted emotions and things have arisen. That's stable, steady progress. The world needs us, and it's an opportunity for us to cultivate our own resiliency, a refuge, and to be of true benefit. So thank you for all the good you are bringing the world.